Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, What to Expect During Construction of Your Dream Home. Thank you for joining us again. I'm Michelle, and I'm the Executive Assistant at TQ Construction, and I'll be helping from behind the scenes. Before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded, and a recording link will be provided to you by the end of this week in a follow-up email. Please stay muted throughout the webinar. We will have a Q&A at the end, so feel free to add your questions along the way in the chat or save them for the end where Henry will address them. And without further ado, I will be happy to introduce you to our TQ Construction President, Henry.
Thanks, Michelle. Today we're talking about what to expect during your project. So how I like to think about it is last time we went through what the overall phases of a project and how to correctly plan them, some of the things to consider there. And here we want to talk about once we know what the plan is, what's it like to do the work, what should you expect along the way. So we starting off with naturally the project handoff. It's kind of our kickoff meeting. Everyone calls it a little differently, but the idea is your distinct moment when we agree this thing is starting. Following through a site prep and the protection of the property, demolition, HAZMAT remediation as needed, hopefully not. The overall execution of the work, how you stay updated, and how you visit the project, how changes to the scope are managed and how you should experience them. That the inspections, approvals, and the fulfillment and completion of the permit, as well as the project completion and kind of what you should expect beyond. So starting us off, a good project.
Sorry, Henry, I think maybe we haven't switched over to the slide.
Oh my goodness. I thought is my screen not changing when I change slides?
I'm just having the cover page right now.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and reshare this then. 1 second. How about now?
It is, yep, there we are, construction handoff.
And if I go back here to table of contents?
This is what we see now.
Okay, fantastic. Sorry about that, everyone.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, good project starts with a good handoff. And what that looks like for you is you're making sure you're walking through with all the key project stakeholders. So that's usually yourselves, the client, the construction team, and usually a representative from the design of the project as well. So you can make sure that everything is equally managed and represented. The idea is you want to have a full confirmation of what the scope is, clear any specific concerns about the project or the property. So if there's anything special about what we're doing that you want us to pay extra close attention to, then it's important to mention that and make sure everyone hears it said out loud. You want to make sure we have a clear picture and understanding of the best ways to access the property. This could be for a new build, what street should we be parking on? Where should we leave our trucks for deliveries? Or if we're renovating your condo, what floor should we deliver our materials to, and how should we access the property? Some stratas don't want workers coming through the lobby. They prefer you enter through the parkade, for example, or a side door. And then lastly, the site-specific storage is really important typically to discuss, especially during a renovation. Where do we get to put our stuff? Which bathroom can we use if we're able to use one? Or where can we make the most dust and noise? So those are the things that are important to coordinate, especially if we're living together while the construction is being done. Once the project gets started, in renovation, as you can see here, we kind of begin the process of site protection. So that is separating the existing home from the part of the homes that's not being touched. In a new build, that looks like the security and safety fencing around the perimeter, things like your tree protection, and protection of any of your garden beds, driveways, etc. During the project, you also do an additional round of protection of the work. Usually, once you reach your finished stages, your cabinets and floors are in. You want to make sure those stay pristine. And so we always want to make sure we protect those with either good floor covering, blankets for your cabinets for when trades are working around them, etc. And during your initial handoff meeting, ideally, if we're renovating your home, we want to be clear on any specific items in the work area that we are going to be salvaging. So things that we want to make sure we set aside, that we save, and don't just launch into the bin like so many other things do during a project. Which is also a thing just worth mentioning is when you're starting a renovation or construction project, it's a great opportunity to throw stuff out. Usually we have dump trucks or bins on site. And so then if you have some old couches, some old luggage you don't like, you know, random bits and bobs that you just are taking up space that you just keep moving from place to place. It's common in every family. It's a great opportunity to just launch it to the dump. Probably the most affordable time you'll ever do it in your life. Once the project is started in earnest, like this place is set up, site's protected and ready for work, we have to start the demolition and potentially hazmat remediation during the project. Uh, Usually this starts with an initial phase of clean demolition, where you take apart like the finishes, surface stuff, um, and then to prepare prior to the project, you should have a hazardous materials report or index completed. So that's usually a third-party professional who comes and takes samples from all the materials in the work area, tests them for hazardous materials, including asbestos, lead paint, or mold. It's not the only ones, but those are the most common. Um, and then if those are discovered, then we want to have a good plan on how to remediate those things and make sure that they can be safely disposed of and no workers are exposed to undue harm and your family isn't either. Um, like I just said, start with the clean demolition to facilitate that. And then as we go through the process of demolition, both for legislative, ethical, and efficiency reasons, we make sure to kind of separate our waste um, and make sure it's sent to the appropriate like recycling station or landfill. Then like the project gets started. Like this is when it really starts to feel real. And where a lot of clients and people we work with will say, this is happening really quickly. That's when essentially everything that needs to be gone is gone. There's nothing in our way between starting work. So if that's a new home, we're beginning with the initial groundwork, starting to basically machines show up on site, clearing out all the existing land that's in the way, doing grading, backfilling, then you begin from concrete and go all the way to completion. So you should expect there's like a predictable sequence to most projects where you start with your groundwork, concrete, framing, get into your rough trades, so your plumbing, electrical, mechanical, followed by insulation, waterproofing, interior, exteriors. And then once all that's ready, you move into the interior side. Get the house weather tight, windows, doors, drywall, insulation, and then you get into finishes. This follows a predictable sequence, and sometimes context will mean that you can kind of shift that around, and it's worthwhile talking to your contractor about that on like why you might change the order of something and what the trade-offs are, because sometimes they are worth it, especially when you're living through a renovation. Um, so when you're living through a project, it's not just the total schedule that matters, like how efficient or the total budget that matters, how cost effective can we be in executing this work. Sometimes it's about how to make the house as livable for you through that experience. Like if we're doing a portion of your home, like say two-thirds of it, but you can still cook a meal, still, bathe, clean, get ready for work and go about your day. You might want us to modify our order of work or to prioritize certain parts of the project in order to make it more comfortable to live through like that multi-month experience. So that's something that's also worth considering and discussing as part of your project plan, because living through a renovation can be really challenging and stressful. It's often worth it because the cost of rental, like a short-term rental in BC, is high. Um, for all being candid. Um, However, it's also rough to live through a project. Like our team is in your house now for months at a time. Typical work days, 7:30 to 3:30. You should expect noise, action, all around. Often in hours that you might expect to be able to be shuffling around in your robe and slippers. Uh, so it's something to consider and talk to any contractor you're working with about like how to manage that. How will you be living on top of each other? How will we maintain that separation, that cleanliness? But that's something that's also, like I said, often worth the trade-off. And so once the thing is ongoing, um, how do you keep in touch of like and stay on top of what's going on? And so that we and any good contractor should manage that through some regularly scheduled visits to the project, as well as like multiple streams of keeping you updated. Um, and this a lot of comes down to like your preference on how you want to receive information. I find that some homeowners, some clients we work with want to be just kind of like kept in the loop, as in like just send me a text when something happens. I'd like to just be aware. Um, and other folks, like about an equal amount, would like a like formal update meeting. Like they don't like being just kind of kept up to date doesn't feel enough. And what they would prefer instead of that is to be just like, let's have a sit down once a week. Let's go over everything for an hour. We have some questions. You have some action items. Let's make sure we touch on all of this. And that comes down to your preference. But what either way, what you should be clear on what on both or all three of what has recently happened, what is currently ongoing, and what you should expect next. And that is like the most critical set of information you should be kind of constantly looped into in that cycle. Because usually you've made a recent decision, you need to be informed on how that is unfolding. You need to be told on what decisions you need to be making at this time, as well as what decisions will you have to make in the future. And you want to be clear on what the current condition of the work is, especially during renovations. If we discover something unforeseen, we want to be able to talk through it and address any potential solutions. And also, as you're visiting the project, you'll have your own questions. Like it's usually the first time or the only time anyone takes on a substantial project. And so it's natural to not be fully educated on every step of the way. And so if you have things that you'd like to understand better, it's great to talk that through with whoever's leading your project. Now, no one likes to talk about changes because it's understood that changes can cost money. Um, but it's also the most important thing to be clear on when you're engaging in a project. And so some changes are just documenting something new. That could be the finish of the hardware on your appliances. So if we look at the background picture in front of us, we see we have a brass finish, like a or gold finish, depending on if you want to argue with the designer or not. Um, if we wanted to change that to a stainless steel, that would require a change order. We want to document that because that's a change to the agreement of the work we're doing. There may not be a cost implication whatsoever on that. It might be just literally handing some papers back and forth between us and the appliance company. Um, but you want to be clear on that stuff. You want to be clear that what you're getting is clearly documented and like agreed to by both all parties. There's also changes that can cost money um, and impact your project, both in terms of time and what your overall deliverables are at the end. Are changes, but in the just in the site conditions. Um, Renovations is the common one everyone's afraid of. Is what if I open my wall and there's something weird there? Those things do happen. Usually, a good pre-construction process will mitigate almost any of those concerns because you can be clear and understand where all your pipes, wires, and conduits are, and you have a pretty good idea of how the structure of the home is before you start. However, these things do happen. This could be basically we opened it up and it was built in a way that doesn't make sense, and so we couldn't have predicted it, and so we have to remedy it. Or there's some rot or water damage that was unforeseen. In new construction, the most common unknown is when you start digging. Um, and that's, we find a boulder underneath the house and then you have to remove it. That can be either you break it, you blow it up, or you haul it out. And all of those have different cost implications. It could be that the ground isn't good enough, and you have to consult the geotechnical engineer in order to proceed with the work. These are just examples of site conditions that can impact your project budget and schedule, but also involve changes to your scope. And so they have to be documented by a change order. The other kind are the changes that you make, our clients, the homeowner, project stakeholder. Whether that's you want to make your house taller and that has an implication in the project, or you want to change the orientation of your bathroom or use a different tile. All of those things require some documentation. Because while you're doing it and we all become friends, it's easy to just say casually, hey, could you make this change, please? Um, but experience has taught us is that it's always best to make sure that you're clear on what the implication of any change is and everyone's on board with it. Um, this also is true within your family. Um, it's not, we've had cases where one partner has requested a change that the other partner didn't agree to, and that we proceeded with it without being clear. Um, and that put us in a pretty awkward position. Um, and that's something that we'd rather avoid. We want to make sure that everyone is like committed to the work we're doing and on board. All that being said, any changes to what you're doing in a project must be documented. You have to be clear on what it is, even if it's a simple word description saying, you know, adding one sink to bathroom, X amount of dollars, and everyone signs. At least you are clear on what you're doing, and everyone understands that this is a step that everyone's making together. One of the most stressful, complicated processes in a project is the approvals and the along the way. But that's what a part of what a contractor is for us to manage the inspections and the both that are required by like the city, but then also the professionals involved in the project, and also your own quality assurance and quality control inspections. And us making sure we deliver the work in such a way that you can have confidence that you will be able to close your permit and gain occupancy to your home. Because if you can't, everyone gets upset. There's a typical cycle of inspections. I won't run through every single one, but I want to point out the distinctions between them. And so, in many of the projects we do, we are designing things slightly outside of what the building code considers, and so we get professionals to basically design us something that they can take liability for. That's what we have, like engineers, whether it's the structural envelope, geotechnical, or mechanical, will provide letters of assurance that this is compliant. And so the city or the province or the municipality in general will take that on and say, this is good enough. But the deal on the other side is they have to inspect the work themselves. So the city inspector doesn't get to sign off on that. And then there's your inspections along the way where you visit the work, you get a feeling for how it's going, and you want to make sure that it actually represents what you committed to building. Because if it doesn't match that, then we have a problem. And what is drawn and committed to is what needs to show up on site. And if that changes, that needs to be sorted. The city has to also visit the project. There are professionals who take liability and sign off on much of what we do. There are certain things that fall specifically under the city that usually are centered around safety. So that is like the rise and run of stairs, whether or not there's sufficient guardrails and an avoidance of tripping hazards and slipping and things like that that can cause like actual harm to people. The same thing goes around fire safety and risks of flood. So the city always checks. And then as we close the permit, itself, then there's also deposits that are placed at the beginning of the project. Those you should expect to receive back. Sometimes it takes a while because the city moves slow. But then again, that's something that you should expect your contractor to manage for you. And so lastly, when it's done, how do you know? And so there's two definitions. One is substantial completion. So that is like 99, 98% done. Or what I think is the easier way to understand it is you can use it for its intended purpose. So you can sleep in your bedroom, you can make a kitchen in your kitchen, or I'm trying to make a dinner in your kitchen, bathe in your bathroom. But there may be some things that are not quite yet done. And so we bridge that by doing a full walkthrough together to understand what is not yet done, like an incomplete item, and things that are not done correctly, a deficient item. And then once those two lists are fully done and like fully completed to everyone's satisfaction, then we have achieved total completion, and then the warranty begins. In a renovation, we have a basically self-funded or contract-backed warranty, and so that is for a company like us, it is a 2 years bumper-to-bumper warranty on all the work we do. With the exception of appliances, which often carry beyond the 2 years that we work. Many appliances will have 5, 10, and longer year warranties. However, when building a new home, you fall under like BC's legislated 2, 5, 10 warranty program, which is 2 years on everything, 5 years on the envelope, and then 10 years on the structure. All that being said, while warranties are what everyone commits to in contract, the relationship with your contractor and whoever's executing your project will also dictate what type of service and care you get beyond the completion of the work and the completion of your warranty. For us, as long as it's semi-reasonable, we often come back and we'll just handle warranty issues well beyond our contracted time, but that is often done on a case-by-case basis. It depends on if you're taking really good care of your house and something fails, then we're much more likely to take care of the work, as opposed to someone who's clearly been a little negligent and then has been beating up their house, and then it's like harder for us to support a warranty claim or a post warranty claim, I should say. Anyways, that's my little rant on warranties and the project completion. And that kind of brings us through as kind of what you should expect during a project and some things to consider. I really hope this was valuable. We kind of covered a lot here. If you do have any more questions or you want to dig into what that might look like for your project, I'd be happy to have a consultation with you. We have a QR code on our screen here that you can scan, and I think that will connect you with Michelle, who then manages my time, and then we can get together and talk through a project. So thank you guys all for your time. I'd love to answer any questions if there are any.
Yeah, we do have three questions for you, Henry. One
Amazing.
of them is, does it cost extra for the time it takes for feedback and progress reports? Um,
I it does in the sense that you pay for the time what you're going to pay for the time that any project professional is spending on your project, like is working for you. Um, but what you should expect is that it to be priced into your job. Um, and so like how I can't speak to every company, but how we handle it is we essentially specifically line item it and assign a budget of the project to the coordination and management of it, which includes keeping you updated. It also includes scheduling inspections, coordinating with our trades, troubleshooting issues on site, and like the job of managing the work and keeping you, our homeowner, up to date on what's going on is part of that job.
mhm. And there's another question regarding who is responsible for obtaining permits.
The I think it's best if your contractor um, or your designer is the one who's directly responsible for obtaining the permits. Uh, every business works a little differently. If you ask the city, in the law, like from a liability perspective, you as a homeowner have to make sure you're responsible that your project has a permit if it requires one. Um, but as opposed to who obtains it and does the work of getting it for you, I think that should fall. My opinion is that it's best handled by a contractor and a design professional. But legally, it's on you if you decide not to permit it and the city finds out. They will be finding the property owner because that's everyone's acting on the benefit of the property. So it's the responsibility of the homeowner, but it should be done by the contractor and the design team.
And we have a third question here. How do we know that the builder has the new home warranty?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, BC Housing has a registry of builders. It's literally called the Builder Registry if you look it through BC Housing. And you can type in a builder's name. Either the owner of the business should be listed, like whoever's the licensed builder as part of that organization. And that the way I think the legislation works, they have to either be an owner or a senior management level person. Um, and it'll let you know if they're in good standing and currently holding a warranty. Like you can look up TQ Construction, you'll see Henri Belisle on there. You'll also see my dad, Ralph Belisle, on there. It's both listed as like the licensed builders for the work. And you also see that we do have a warranty that is in good standing. So anybody in BC can look that up. You just type in look BC Housing Builder Registry. And the same thing goes for if you're looking at purchasing a home and you're wondering if there is a warranty in place. BC Housing also has a registry of every home built that under the new home warranty program, and it'll tell you if the warranty is active or not.
Right. I think those are the three questions we had. If we have any other questions, feel free to jump in now if you like. And if not, and if there is a question that comes about after this webinar, feel free to, of course, contact us and we can follow up from there too. So if there's no more further questions in the next minute or two, we're probably going to be wrapping up shortly here.
All right.
Yeah. Uh, no further questions at this moment.
All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Hope to see you at the next webinar.
Bye.
Bye.